Yeah, you have that thing with the pyramid. I want a 6-section revision. If you do that properly, you haven't updated that and changed it out. Then it goes into the not because you're doing it wrong. You don't have information.
So it works pretty well. Cutting it, you guys trust.
Now, one of the things is, I used to take one department after they did that. One department at a time. First of all, only do so many calculations, and then it comes out of the space to get back. So take one department at a time.
Don't we use the same system now whenever you would do stuff?
And they have
if I go from 1 year to the next, if you save that much this year, you're saving twice that much last year. That's the total.
No. The last meeting was the that's right. I heard feedback.
They kind of put that right on the wall last year.
So we should not talk this for anybody else to work.
No, because they saw it happening. They saw it happen.
So ultimately, whoever sees I don't remember seeing a vote on that.
Okay, so I hit reply all right, now I can. Good evening. The August 12th regular meeting of the Jersey Shore School Board come to order. Call to order, please.
Mr. Berger.
Here.
Mr. Frable.
Here.
Dr. Pecchia.
Here.
Mrs. Stemler.
Here.
Mrs. Stover.
Here.
Mr. Schweitzer.
Here.
Mrs. Thomas.
Here.
Mrs. Lawson.
Here.
Mr. Allen.
Here.
All 9 members present.
Thank you. We stand for a pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dr. Wendrich for communications.
I have 2 items that I would like to share with the board and the community. The first one is to let you know that we're getting ready for the start of a new school year. We have new teacher induction tomorrow and Wednesday. We also have our teachers coming back with us on Monday and August 19th through the 22nd. They'll have 4 days of in-service, some new and old learning opportunities for them. And the students' first day is Monday, August 26th, so we're looking forward to the new school year beginning. I'd also like to share some information that I received from Penn College in regard to our Penn College Now program through their end-of-year report for the 2018-19 school year. We had a total of 139 students enrolled in Penn College Now courses. And of those 139 students, they earned in total 681 credits towards attending Penn College. So I think that's absolutely wonderful. The amount of money that students and parents saved by their children enrolling in a Penn College Now course at the high school was $379,998 in total. So the Penn College Now program continues to thrive and is doing extremely well, and we're very happy and honored to continue this partnership. So I thought that would be good to share with everyone. And that's my communication report.
President's report, the first thing I have, and I think I asked for volunteers before on this one, was on a PSBA liaison from the board. If anybody is interested in that position, PSBA would like us to designate one person as their primary contact person for the board. No takers? All right. Item number 2, and this is just a reminder for public participation during courtesy of the floor. We have 2 courtesy of the floor sessions. The first session is specific to items that are on the agenda for the night, and you may only speak on those items because we want to get those addressed and put away, and get your input before we act on them or move on to discussions ourselves. And the second is that we'll be requiring a specific agenda item when you come to the podium or when you sign in on the sign-in sheet to speak. So if you didn't put something on here tonight, it looks like, well, I can't read one of them, but if you're speaking on anything other than something that's on the agenda when you come to the podium, please state the agenda item that you're going to speak about. And if there's no agenda item, you'll be asked to move to the end of the meeting to the general courtesy of the floor. Okay, intermediate unit report.
We have our meeting, I think, next week. I'll have a report beginning of September or end of August.
Thank you, Kelly. Okay, moving on to superintendent's report.
There's one item underneath the superintendent's report this evening, and that is the report that Mr. Enders will give based on information he was asked to present. Mr. Enders?
Well, the 4 documents we'll be discussing this evening, I placed at your seats, so you should have everything we're going through this evening at your seats. The very first document, the first 2 documents are standard issue budget documents that we've been looking at for probably 2 years now. The first one is a long-term financial outlook without school closures. I will emphasize that's without. It's dated 6/24/19. The reason being is this is how our final budget looks that was approved for the 1920 school year. That budget has $330,000 deficit in it, and with a projected year-end fund balance of just over $5.2 million. In 2021, the deficit is projected to be $1.2 million, with an ending fund balance without a tax increase of $4 million. And in 21-22, the deficit is projected to be $2.1 million, with year-end fund balance without a tax increase being over $1.8 million. And the final 22-23, the deficit is projected to be $3.1 million, with a year-end fund balance without a tax increase of just shy of 1.3 million, or a deficit fund balance just shy of $1.3 million. Like I said, that's been the document we've been looking at. This is our final budget, so I'm not really going to review that in a whole lot of detail as part of this presentation, but I want you to have that because we need that for reference. Second document is the long-term financial outlook with school closures, and this assumption is that the closure of both schools. For the 1920 year, we would have had a surplus in the budget of $341,590 with a projected year-end fund balance of just shy of $6 million. 2021, we would have a projected deficit of $348,000 deficit in the budget with a year-end fund balance of $5.5 million. 21-22, the deficit for that year is projected to be $1.2 million with a year-end fund balance just shy of $4.4 million. And finally, in the 22-23 year, the projected deficit is just shy of $2.2 million with a year-end fund balance of $2.1 million. So like I said, that shows the impact of the savings and the positions that would be eliminated if both the buildings were closed.
And that's without a tax increase,
And that was
correct?
all without tax increases. Those are the same assumptions that we've been using to look at this document apply throughout. There's no attritional savings. It shows a 2% increase in the expired teacher's contract with step movement in every year. And all the other expenditure line items remain the same. There are some call-outs, and I will be discussing those here shortly, where the numbers and the expenditures do change because of unemployment compensations and so forth and so on, but I will explain all those with the next document. So the third document is entitled School Closure Savings. It just compares those two deficit numbers and also the two ending fund balance numbers in those two previous documents I provided you. So the savings from closure in 1920 would be $672,000, and in 2021 the savings increases to just shy of $864,000. In 21-22 it goes to $943,526. In 22-23 it goes to $971. Why the increase there is because our initial year of closure, we are also including in our budget the maximum unemployment compensation for all the furloughed staff that could potentially be there. That unemployment compensation should only be there approximately 1 year, and that is like $114,000. So that's why you see the large increase between the 1920 and the 2021 school year in savings. It's because of the unemployment compensation coming out, expenditure coming out in the 2021 school year. Same is true in the 21-22 year. We've also have projected a cost of $55,000 to close and consolidate the schools. That came from the feasibility study that was provided to us a year ago. So that also gets removed in those future years because those are all one-time costs. And then in the 21-22 year, we also are projecting an operational cost for the two closed buildings of $25,000 per year per school, so a total of $50,000 per year. And those are projected for 2 years until those buildings would be sold. And the $25,000 number is approximately what Nipponose cost the district to operate while it was just sitting out there vacant per year. Because we have to keep it heated. We have to keep electricity out there. So those are why those numbers kind of gradually increase. The bottom part of that row shows the impact on the fund balance. So obviously in year one, this is going to be the same number as the savings, $672,061. The 2020-2021 school year, The change in fund balance is 1.5 million. 21-22, the change in fund balance is just shy of 2.5 million. And finally, in the 22-23 year, the change in fund balance is just shy of 3.5 million. Okay? The final document that you have was what I said, Dr. Gady and I would kind of come together and take a look at, try to pull something together in regarding to the closure of Nipponos and what type of financial impact that's had on the district. The top portion of that shows the positions that were saved. And the numbers on there, I'm not going to go through the numbers. I pulled those from, I actually went back and found the numbers that Adrian presented at the public meeting that was held when, or the public hearing that was held when Nipponos closed. I believe the 3 teaching positions, at least one, if not 2 of those, if not all of them, were retirees that were just not filled again. Because I can tell you the one teacher in that number was projected to be about $100,000 savings. So if that was a retiree or not, I'm not sure. What Dr. Dady and I did look at, and we believe is true, is that the positions that are listed there, there's, I think 9 positions there. Those positions were all saved. Whether or not the dollar amounts are accurate or inaccurate, I can't validate that because I don't know exactly who they were, but I can tell you that we believe that the 9 positions were eliminated from the closure down. The other thing I did when I looked at the operational cost of Nipponos was I looked at a 3-year average of the building and what it cost to operate that building on an average of 3 years. Just because in the last year, I think it was the highest year of the 3 years. So, because I didn't want to skew it too high, I think it was like 125,000 in its final year. Plus I knew when Nipponos was closing was when the oil prices were kind of kept gradually going up. So I want to go back a couple of years. So the 3-year average on the operating costs of NIP was just over $100,000. On the reverse side of that, I also looked at the 3-year average of JSE prior to NIP closing, and the most recent 3-year operating costs of JSE, and those are about the same. So what I was looking at was making sure when we move the kids from Nipponos into JSE, that the operating costs of JSE did not increase, and they did not. They're about a wash. There's multiple reasons why that. Some of it's probably because of the renovation of JSE and the savings that were realized from that renovation project. But there's also not, there was no increase in cost from additional students going into that building. I did not look at the cost for the expansion of JSE, because by the same token, it would be very subjective to look and project what any capital improvement costs would have to be done at Nipponos in the past 7 years. So those numbers are not included. All in all, I will tell you that based on the numbers Adrian provided and those operating costs that I did look at, the recurring savings from Nipponos is just over $550,000 per year. The other thing to consider when you're looking at these positions, whether or not the 550 is a higher or lower number, what I do know is that's a static number and does not consider any type of increase in benefits that would have taken place since that closure happened. So, for example, the retirement rate alone in 13-14, which was the first year after it closed, the retirement rate was 16.93%. This current fiscal year, the retirement rate is 34.29%. So the retirement rate doubled. So, like I said, Whether or not the number is higher or lower, I know this much, the number would have increased over time. Are there any questions?
I have a couple. I didn't get a chance to get home. I had a lot of them written down, but I've forgotten them all. But you go to this Nipponos closure there, I thought it was like 2.1 closure, but you're saying it's like 2.7. So basically, if, I'm trying to compare these numbers, we have a $330,000 deficit for the 19-20 year. We would have had probably closer to a $3 million deficit, correct? In other words, that 2.7 had to be taken out of the budget somewhere as a credit there, so if that wouldn't have been closed way back, all those numbers down there, the deficits, unless something would have changed drastically, would have been almost 2.7 higher.
Yes, I mean, outside of other changes that would have occurred in the past 6 years, something, I can tell you this much, the deficit that we had this year would have been higher. If nothing else, if we wanted to throw out the savings from the positions, we know that building will cost us $100,000 per year just to operate.
Right, okay, the other quick question I have, I guess, is, as in all your budgets, you project a 2% salary increase for employees, association members, everybody, I guess. Do you have any idea, I guess I'm looking at a projection if, over the next 4 years, if the association were to play out a scenario, taking maybe a 2 or 3 or 4 year pay freeze, how much that would have actually increased this budget? In other words, can you come up with a number that would give me this 2% with the compensation? It's probably hard to do, but you're talking $1 million more per year?
I believe in the final budget, the number on, because remember we pulled that projected increase out of its special line items in the budget and put it under contingency. And I believe that number was right around $550,000 what that increase will be for at 2% with step between the salaries and the benefits.
Total for that?
Yes.
So in other words, and that would increase, gradual increase every year then? Okay, like I say, I had other questions, but I didn't get a chance to get back to pick them up. So that's all I have right now, unless there's something else here. Thank you.
Mr. Anderson, the question I have is, when you go down through the annual savings from 2013 to 2019, and you add up the number of cost, the amount of cost savings, and you're going off of 3 teaching positions, 1 secretary, 1 custodian, 1 library aide, 2 classroom aides, and 1 nurse aide, can you with certainty tell me that none of those positions were reinstated at any point in time, which would negate any given one of those years in cost savings?
I know the secretary was not. I am pretty confident all the ancillary positions, what I call the ancillary positions, were not reinserted. The 3 teaching positions, I don't know for certain, but I believe from what Dr. Day and I reviewed, that those were eliminated.
So like even the teaching positions across the district that we added, you're saying there weren't any added teaching positions that would have negated this particular cost savings?
So you're saying, would we,
If you added a position in this
So-
district,
so let me clarify, let me see if this is correct.
Right.
What you're saying is, those 3 teaching positions were elementary positions.
okay,
Okay.
right? Mhm.
It's the only way this works is it has to be an elementary position. So those 3 were elementary positions. So what you're asking me is, was 3 elementary positions removed, but we added a home ec position at the high school. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm just asking, what I'm having a hard time understanding, and I just need clarity about it, is how, number one, it can be so uniform that it's 555,895.65 every single year, which you said is static, I get that. But I just want to be clear that these positions were not replaced at any point in time in any part of our district, because wasn't that negated
I don't believe they
as a
were because
recurring cost savings?
I don't believe they were because I would believe, if I looked back at the population of the union staff, there's been more positions reduced since these positions were
So
reduced.
my next question, just to pick your brain, is why are we just looking at elementary teaching positions with respect to this particular piece, if it's all tied to the budget and cost savings of the budget?
Because the question was is what the savings were from the closure of Nipponos. And if Nipponos was not closed, those 3 positions would not have been able to be eliminated. They were eliminated by bringing the kids over to JSC and making them you're increasing class sizes, but you might be increasing class sizes 1 or 2 kiddos. I don't know that for a fact. I shouldn't even make that statement, but that's how you obtain that savings, is bringing those kids in and putting them into a
Right, and I get that,
class.
I just am just wanting to make sure that it's accurately stated that we haven't increased positions because of anything, and I just wanted to get clarity about that. Second question, which I addressed to Mr. Broger a while back, and whoever's out there can hold their nasty comments to my email, I'm gonna ask it again and try to get some clarity, is why then did the board from 13 to 19, with the exception of 2016, feel compelled to raise taxes if this was so much of a savings?
Why?
Because I really thought that was supposed to be the fix. That was what part of the sale of this whole idea was that would give us relief to our taxpayers, and they wouldn't have to pay as much tax in. And it just seems to me that there's not been a relief for those taxpayers, with the exception of the 1 year, which was 2016, I believe.
One is you're still going, we still have increase in costs. I mean, even in the projections I'm showing with closures, still seeing an increase in costs. We still have a problem, and the problem is going to continue to be is in the benefit line items and the salary line items of this budget. Like I said earlier, the retirement costs have doubled
Right,
since that time.
right.
I mean, that's a major component of why this $2.7 million isn't seen as cash in your back pocket for since that time. It's because you're basically taking the savings and spreading it out to this cost factor.
Okay, so just to be fair then, because I think it's very important to make this point at this point in the game, this is, if the board opts to close both of those schools or one of those schools, that is not guaranteeing that taxes are not going to be increased. Is that a fair statement to make?
I would tell you that I don't believe any of the three administrators have ever made that statement, nor would I ever make that statement.
What, that the taxes would not be increased? Okay. And the last
So the
thing.
answer to your question is yes, that's a fair statement.
Okay, thank you. The last thing I have is, through our capital projects, we know that Sal is requiring a roof fix, which is going to be $270, something in and around there, 300,000, whatever it would be. My question is, how does that impact? Obviously, we would not be selling the building either without or with fixing that. I guess I'm trying to see that there might not be hidden costs in this whole process that haven't been even considered here in terms of cost savings.
So you're trying to say is the potential of not fixing that roof on the and what that impact will have on.
On the sale of that
value-
property.
The value of
and-
the property.
Exactly.
I won't disagree that that would have, could potentially have an impact on the sale of that property. I don't know that. It's, I guess it's kind of like when I look at a house, I can look at the roof and I can say, well, you have a roof problem, and I'm not willing to pay for the premium that you have.
So it's fair to assume then that the reduction of that particular piece could impact the sale of that building. We would not get as much for it if we sold it.
I would not say that, just by the sheer mechanism on how you sell school buildings.
So by auction, you think that that might not have an impact?
I would tell you this much, the amount that you got from the sale of Nipponos shocked me. Because I sold a building in Elamsport that was an old school that we got less than $200,000 for. Now it's a much smaller building. I was at the very, very end of that process. But an auction depends on who shows up on that given day.
Okay. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Because I would like a clarification with Mrs. Watson. You mentioned my name along with nasty emails. Please confirm that I did not
Oh, no,
send
you did not.
nasty
No, no,
emails.
no, no. No, you did not, Harry. It's always love with you. No, no.
I didn't want the public
No,
to take the
not
essence
at all.
of that.
No, no one
You
on,
mentioned that.
no one on this panel
Appreciate it.
said
I had
nasty.
no idea that was going on.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to try to keep it from happening again.
All right, I have a question. On the long-term financial outlook with school closures, you identify savings starting 2019-20. We have not closed schools for 2019-20, so why is the projected savings starting then? Therefore, we have some false premises here, because that didn't happen, and it's not gonna happen. It could happen in the next year. It's not gonna happen in 2019-20, but you're giving us the savings like it did. I don't understand that.
Due to the essence of time, I had to put it in the 1920 school year.
Well, then these numbers are not correct, but that's okay.
But the number, I believe would only be higher because.
And that's very probable, that's okay, but I mean, it's not showing. us
The health
correct
insurance
information.
and the PSERS rate is only going to be higher in the future years. So I understand what you're saying, that I did it in the 1920 and it's not feasible to do in the 1920, but I also want to show what a 4-year impact would look like. Because part of the growth or the increase in savings that you're seeing is also the natural increase in the cost of the benefits. Because when I do these budgets and I do these 4-year projections, I look at every individual employee, what their salary is and how much their benefits cost. So when I take one of them out, I can show exactly what the impact is in the 4 years. And every one of the individual 4 years. Because PSERS gives me what their projected rates are for the next 4 years. And that's what's in these numbers. These rates for PSERS, and there's a 6% adjustment to health insurance. Any other questions?
I don't expect you to have this number, but I'd be curious what our total fund balance was at the beginning of the closure of the Nipponos for both unrestricted as well as our capital fund balance.
When you say capital, you mean capital projects?
Capital projects,
Okay.
because I'm thinking that we've went through a lot of the savings that we had set aside, which would explain again why we've increased some taxes along the way.
So the only other clarifying note there I would like to get is when you say the beginning of the Nipponos, because there's dates back in 2000, I think 4 or 5, that some people have found the closure
No,
conversation
it's
started.
as of 2/13.
So you want to see it as of 6/30/13?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, just to clarify Mrs. Watson's statement, I was on the board at the time we closed Nipponos, and if you can find anything where I said that that would be our be-all, end-all, cure-all of raising taxes, good luck. Because it wasn't said by everybody here. You may have heard it at a meeting, certainly from some member, but.
That's what I'm referring to. I'm not referring to the board making a blanket statement about that. I'm
I
just
don't think it
saying.
was ever stated as from the board perspective across the board is all.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to
agree with
clarify,
that.
just clarify.
That's
Thank you.
fine.
In regards to the 1920 as well, I just confirmed with Harry's just to help you out, Mary, is I thought that when this was asked for, that Harry had asked for what it would have been had we closed for this year.
Might have
I
been,
thought
but that's the last
included.
meeting, but.
And Harry confirmed that that's what he asked for.
And that's fine, but that's not correct information, but that's what it could have been what he asked for, and that's what we got, but it's not correct information.
Ben, I have a question, Ben. On the Nipano side, 2014, you show your savings of 555,000 based on the list of furlough people. That's the list of 9. And when I go over 16, 17, 18, 19, there's no list of furloughs, no list of employees that are actually being furloughed. How could you come up with that same amount of money that you came up with on 2014 for these other years where you have no list of employees being laid off or terminated?
I think that was very similar to the same question that Mrs. Lawson asked. And so I guess the best way to answer that was I was asked to look at the savings generated from the closure of Nipponos. Dr. Gady and I reviewed the staffing. We believe these were the 9 staff that were able to be eliminated with the closure of that building. Once those staff are eliminated, that's why we don't change the numbers, because you don't pay for that staff member for all those years. So the reason why you don't have the same list for all those years is because it's the same position, a person that was eliminated, the position was eliminated from the closure. That's why you don't have the listing there for every subsequent year. It's the same 9 people. They're recurring savings.
What's the definition of recurring annual savings?
It's a savings that will happen year after year after year. Just like a recurring cost will be a cost that will happen year after year after year.
I mean, I have trouble understanding how you can just arbitrarily show 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 year a savings of 555,000 without any list to back it up.
The list,
I have a problem with that.
the list is the same list up front that's shown above it. That's
Well, the list is the same for those years as it is for 2014, as
Yes,
far as the number of people being furloughed and so forth.
yes.
Had we not closed, then all those positions would have been retained over the years.
Right.
So their savings for every year beyond that. In general, Mary, I mean, you can pick apart the numbers all you want to, but that's the best you can get probably.
I agree, you just
And it
can't
also
make
has
blanket
been,
statements.
and has been also said, this doesn't include an increase in PACERs, and it would have not also included any increase in step movement by any of the 3 teachers that were there at the time, correct?
That's correct.
So that 555,000 every year, where do you find that money? And then where do you put it in the budget?
Well, as Mrs. Lawson asked that question, your costs have been increasing. The PACERS rate has doubled since this closure happened. So your costs continue to increase. It's eating away at the savings that you had from that closure. What Mr. Berngard's saying is that this initial question was if that building would not have closed, would our deficit have been larger today or a month ago when we did the budget? The answer I can only give him is yes, it probably would have been larger.
I go to the other, saving the $72,000 savings on closure of two schools. There's no listing of furloughs, no listing of cuts by line as you did in the memo. How could you come up with that number with that? Under Avis, there's no list of teachers being furloughed or custodians or aides or anything like that, nor do you have a list like that for salaries. So how did you come up with that 600 or that whatever it is, $672,000 in savings?
That listing is the same listing that was presented at the hearings that we had back in February and March. I will give those to you. There was three teaching positions, 2 secretarial positions, 2 aide positions, 3 custodian positions, 1 assistant principal position, and then the operating cost of the 2 buildings is less unemployment cost for those positions that were eliminated, and less the cost to close and consolidate, which was $55,000, and less cost to operate the closed building, which was $50,000. The only position that is different from the one that was presented at the hearings to that, what I just read to you, was the AD position.
It would have been helpful in reading this and trying to understand it if you actually would have put those listings that you just repeated on this paper would be more helpful.
I will make sure I give that in my board update along with the answer to Mr. Allen's question.
Mr. Enders, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I am going to ask this because, correct me if I'm wrong, but Nipponos, once that building was sold, that came back on the tax rolls for the district, did it not?
Yeah, and I actually had a note here, and I failed to bring that up when I discussed the savings from the closure. Is we've received tax revenue on that building since it was sold. J. David, I'm not real comfortable releasing that information publicly, what that tax revenue was on that building.
It is a matter of public record.
It is?
Yeah, if you check with the tax office, they will have an assessed value and what taxes are applied.
I will tell you, including including 1920, tax revenue on that building will be $79,000.
That's
You mean how many
accumulated.
times?
That's accumulated.
Okay.
Yes, that's accumulated since the time.
How many years?
2016, I believe is the first one I have.
3 tax years?
Yes, there's a couple interims in there.
We also lost some tax revenue in the region because of the salaries that were eliminated. Those people that lived here, that money, and if you would attribute that year after year and add it up, that money was not used on goods and services within this region. So you just want to point out, there's both sides to that as well.
I understand that the tax was based on the $470,000 that we got for the building. But I understand that since that building's been changed and remodeled and renovated, it's worth quite a bit of money. And that tax base is going to change. And I don't know if you have any information on that or not.
I do, I'm just kind of skirting around, looking at this list and making sure I'm okay releasing. So I have the current year tax rate, which is way higher than what the prior year one is.
Well, again, that is a matter of, will it be a matter of public record? I believe it is.
Okay, I don't want to release something that I will put it on. Current year tax revenue at face is just over $34,000. the prior year face value was just shy of 16.5. So you are seeing an increase in that tax revenue, actually 16.5 and 9,700, so about 17.5.
And just to be clear, you're talking school district taxes only, you're not talking.
Yeah, this is only, these are only
School
our
district
bills.
taxes, right.
So that's whether or not that increase we're seeing is done, I don't know.
Any additional questions to Mr. Enders? Thank you.
I will provide you your question concerning fund balance for capital projects at 6/30/13, and Mr. Switzer, I'll make sure you have the listing of all the positions.
Thank you, Mr. Enders. That ends my report, Mr. Allen.
Board will go into executive at this time for personnel and legal, and we'll return, additional business will be conducted.
And as a one, and arbitration.
All the way to the lounge. There was no privacy either way.
Oh, at the end over there.
I don't know if we want to mention that. Serena and make it here.
Okay, board will come back to order. We have an addendum for tonight's agenda for personnel. We currently have items A through K, and we'll be adding L through P. It's been a busy week or so of interviewing. So I'll just read off the positions and then ask for a motion to add this to the agenda for this evening. And then we'll go to the courtesy of the floor before the action items begin. Asking for a motion to appoint Serena Henry to the position of athletic director at $55,000 per year. Bethany Hartman as a business teacher position, step M8, at a salary of $59,700. Appointment of Charlotte Ann White to a music position at step B1 at a cost of $45,000 salary. Appointment of Andrea Decker as a paraprofessional at the Jersey Shore Elementary School for an annual salary of $16,684. And appointment of Melinda Barton to a 5-hour-a-day paraprofessional position at Jersey Shore Elementary at a hourly rate of $9.06. I have a motion to add those to tonight's agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Larry and Karen.
Second.
Any discussion on those items? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right, moving on to the first courtesy of the floor, and again, this will be limited specifically to items that are on the agenda for this evening. First sign-in is Mr. Francis.
Bert Francis, 1425 Locust Street, and I'm going to address item A under the superintendent's, Mr. Ender's presentation on funds and financing, et cetera, et cetera. The recurring annual savings from Nipino closure specifically. With all due respect to Dr. Dede, Mr. Enders, and Mr. Brungard, my comments are with all respect to you gentlemen. I appreciate you folks. Back when we were doing the Nipino School project and we're getting close to the end of the closing and coming up with numbers, I contacted Mr. Enders and we were having a conversation. I don't know if he remembers that or not, but we were comparing numbers, and I told him I've been following numbers through that project, and he said to me, he said, "What kind of number did you come up with?" So I gave him my number and just threw that at him just as a guess. He said, "Well, you're pretty close." Well, I felt pretty good about that. Based on that fact, we all have to understand, in my opinion, and I like an answer tonight, there was no savings whatsoever, and there will not be any savings on the closing of the Nipino School. And we have to understand that when we started that project, or it was mandatory, we got a feasibility study and an $8 million cost on upgrading that building to state requirements, et cetera, et cetera. And then through the process, then this led to that, led to that, led to this, extras, add-ons, and we were going crazy. And I think we came up with an additional $8 million before we were finished with the Churchill Elementary School, based on the fact we were going to close Nippenose. So I would like somebody to explain to me how we can say we saved money closing Nippenose School when we incurred an additional $8 million cost to do that. And how are we paying for that $8 million cost? Where does that money come from? That's the question. After Mr. Brungard, the last meeting, he requested this be done. He asked for the business manager to do this survey or study on these projected costs and savings, et cetera, et cetera. And some of you know that in the past I have, and Mr. Brungard will let you know, I called him the next day. I think you remember that. I did call you, but you called me back, and I appreciate you calling me back, and we had a conversation, discussion, and we got it all finished and done. I said, hey, Eric, we didn't save any money, did we? Well, I guess you're right. So that's all I'm saying. How can you do a project and incur an additional $8 million by doing one thing and not having to pay that off? Where does a business manager get the money to pay that additional $8 million? And some of these numbers are debatable, and et cetera, et cetera. So, can somebody tell me? Can I ask Mr. Hendricks, where's the $8 million money coming from to pay off our debtors? Where's that? Take it out of the general fund, or how do we encounter that?
So the JSC renovation project that you're referencing, it was paid with a bond that was issued.
Right.
And that bond is now amortized and paid off annually with a annual payment. We have multiple bonds for multiple construction projects. So that's how the JSC project was financed.
Okay, I understand that and know that, so I'm glad you brought that up, because back at that time, I remember when we went out and borrowed the money and went through the bonding process, and when our bond management firm came to us and discussed this, where we're going for the additional funds, et cetera, in the statement, I think you'll find, we went from a AAA rating from the bonding company, we went from a AAA rating down to a single A rating. And at that particular time, I remember the man standing here representing our bonding firm and so on, making the statement, your rating dropped from a AAA rating down to a single A rating based on, we consider the difficulty you're going to have in paying this bond off, this additional $8 million and so on and so forth. And I think if I can check the records on that and see if that did occur or happen. So it's beyond my comprehension.
Mr. Francis,
Yes.
your time is up. Thank you. Next is Mr. Pryor.
Pryor, Mifflin Township. Can I make a brief comment to answer Mr. Francis' question?
I'd rather not get into people arguing back over.
I'm not arguing. I'm just saying
among
that was based on
speakers.
closure of all outlying elementary schools, and then eventually ending up with a campus setting for better security and protection of the students and more opportunity. All three schools. That was the whole plan. Looking down the road, not at the windshield. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Enders, for your good report. I just want to remind you, when people have no argument, they start questioning your figures right away. Anyway, concerning the alternative ed for disruptive youth, there's an old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Most taxpayers do not appreciate having to pay for students' alternative education because they are disruptive in class. The district should not be the parents. My kids went through the system without being disruptive because they knew what the consequences would be when they got home if I found out that they were disruptive. You just hired another student counselor for $67,000 a year. Isn't it some of their responsibilities to talk with these kids, try to straighten them out, change their attitude? I remember when I went to school, if there's a disruptive kid, they'd go to the principal and the principal would discipline that kid. If the kid didn't straighten out after them, they expel them. Don't expect the responsible parents, taxpayers, to pay for the disruptive youth who had irresponsible parents in some cases. Make the parents or guardians pay that cost. We shouldn't have to do it. Maybe those kids would straighten out, maybe the parents would straighten out and discipline those kids and teach them right from wrong. But don't make the taxpayers pay for their disruptive kids. Thank you.
There may have been a question perhaps about where that is on the agenda. It's under miscellaneous C.
HC, yes.
Miscellaneous C, HC.
Thank you. That's it. Okay. We'll close the first courtesy of the floor and move on to personnel.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, discussion, concerns on the personnel agenda? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Yeah.
Can I recognize the two teachers
Yes,
that we
please.
just hired
Yes.
that are in, the athletic director, Serena, is here with us. Serena, would you please stand up and be recognized? Thank you. Is there something that you would like to say?
I would just like to thank the board for this opportunity, for your consideration and, oh gosh, now I'm on the spotlight. Okay. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate your confidence in me, and I'm looking forward to seeing our kids grow, working with the coaches, and just be on this journey with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. And we also have a jersey.
Just a comment about Serena, when we were doing her interview, she brought her magic bag along with her. So she was pulling stuff out of there left and right, so surprised she didn't have an acceptance speech. So, thank you.
And also with us this evening is a Jersey Shore High School graduate, Jacob Manival, who is going to be our new English teacher at the high school. Jacob, welcome. Do you have something to say?
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you for the opportunity. My years in this district were all great years, and I look forward to the chance to get back, pass it on to the next generation of kids, and do the best that I can for you all and the students. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob.
Any of the other applicants are out there?
I didn't notice anyone else.
You didn't see anybody?
No.
Okay. Curriculum instruction, we have nothing. Building and grounds, nothing. Finance items A and B.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Miscellaneous M, A, B, and C. And I have to call out again the middle school care closet. So if you find yourself with some savings on your shopping list, feel free to take those things in for our students, and it will benefit from that program. Do you have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any questions, concerns, comments?
Can you give just a short synopsis of what the care closet is, so that everybody...
You want to give a real short?
Mr. Valdez?
You don't have to make a speech of it.
The care closet is an idea the teachers have brought forth, and they're looking how to implement effectively, but essentially it is an opportunity for community members to provide a space and I guess an area where students can come and pick up items that they might need for home. It could be hygiene products. We're looking for laundry detergent, things that students need possibly after a tragedy, whether it be like a house fire, things to replenish, and also just to provide a space for them to feel cared for. We're also looking at providing some laundry services for students who struggle to do that at home with means or whatever it may be. So a place where we can meet students' needs so that they can come and focus on school while they're there.
Thank you, Mr. Valdez.
Any comments or questions from the board? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Old business. We're going to have a board discussion regarding the optional plans that were presented at the special meeting back in July. And we're going to, so those are the options 1, 2, and 3. Just like to point out that we received 3 email responses after presentation of the 3 plans, and no hard copy written responses at all. Like to limit the discussion to 30 minutes and kind of debate the pros and cons of each plan as you've had a chance to review them now for a while. And I'll ask, I guess the board members would rather discuss one plan at a time for 10 minutes or just, pick them out of a hat and speak what's on your mind regarding any plan at any time. Any preference one way or the other?
I'd like to go with the second. Your option of just going as we go and shotgunning it, I'd rather do that.
Okay.
So the whole, I'll start.
Anybody opposed to that? Okay.
Well, when we started this, I believe the idea of these plans was to find cost-saving alternatives. And I believe everybody here can agree with that. And the 3 options that were presented at the special meeting, when you look at the net cost savings, there are none. They actually incur additional costs to the district. For that reason alone, I'm not sure why we would continue discussing these plans, when the entire underlying discussion we've had for over 1.5 years is trying to find cost savings.
Okay. That was the start. Mrs. Thomas, do you want to go? We'll just kind of go around the table.
From my perspective, we know that there's some people that want schools closed, we know there's some people that don't want schools closed, and in the options that we presented at our alternative meeting, or whatever it is you call it, if you look at option 3, which is the hybrid option, I think offers the best education for our students. The recurring cost includes some new employees in that, which we're not 100% sure that's the need, that's the projection that we have. That's the projection that we have now. We voted twice not to close schools, and here we are again still looking at it. So in talking about these options, I think are very relative from the perspective of the fact that is there any change we can do in our school system to better improve the education delivery to our students. And I feel that option 3 does. I think it solves a multitude of problems that we have. We're still keeping the community schools open.
So would you, what is option 3? Would you tell us what option 3 is?
Mr. Schweitzer, we're going around the one.
Option 3 is the hybrid option, which is the closure of the main building.
Meryl, it's on.
Well, for the people that are in the audience, option 3 is closing of the admin building. We have Ava Salisbury at K to 2, that's a misprint there. JSD would be 3 to 6, which is where your
third grade is the first year that your PI double, not PI double, the testing takes place on the state level. And so you have a second focus of learning as well as dealing with the testing. And your class size would be totally balanced. The middle school was 7 and 8, with the central administration being moved to that middle school, and the high school remains as it is, 9 through 12, with some potential, which is not part of this, but is part of the comprehensive plan for expansion of career and technical education.
My turn, Craig.
You already kind of.
What started?
You started it, so.
Can I keep going?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Rather than try to keep track of who's.
First off, nobody wants to close the school, even when I said that, okay? I don't want to close the school. I want to do what's best fiscally for this school district. And yes, option 3 gives us more opportunities. So does adding Chinese as a language, so does adding additional CPE programs. But we are fiscally constrained with what we can do. So, if you want to look at the best way to balance the student body in the classrooms, then option 5 does that best at a cost savings, not incurring additional expenses.
Mr. Fritz.
I have nothing to say.
Mrs. Stemler.
Well, I would have to agree with what Dr. Pecky has stated. I definitely do not want to go with any kind of option that's going to have a recurring cost with no recurring savings. And I also agree, you know, it's not easy to families in closing outlying school buildings where these children, you know, live. But as I looked over option 1, 2, and 3, especially option 3 was what stuck out to me as I had noticed that there were, I think it was the kindergarten classes were being moved K-2, being moved to outlying buildings. And I was under the impression, even though I wasn't on the board during this time, but when JSE was being remodeled, they specifically had it remodeled for kindergarten wings with bathrooms installed in those individual classrooms just for K-2. And now this would be deviating from that plan, and really it's not designed for older students for those particular classroom buildings. So really when it all boils down to it, I'm with Dr. Pecchia on option 5 of.
What is option 5?
It would be closing both elementary schools.
We're not really, I mean, let's try to contain it to the options 1, 2, and 3 that was on the agenda for this evening.
So that's where I would stand currently.
Of the 3 that we're discussing tonight, though, which?
None of them, because they all have recurring costs. There's absolutely no recurring savings in any of those options.
Okay. Thank you. Mrs. Watson.
I would say that the option of the 3 that appeals to me the most is option 3. I love the idea that we isolate specific grade levels and they can be targeted for specific educational need. One of the things that I'm a little bit questioning is, when do we reach a point with our special education that we can't accommodate anybody else at JSE? We have almost all of our special education children housed at JSE to target and to provide special education services. And I just feel that we need, I think there a disbursement of those children and sending them back to their community schools and housing our special education staff in 3 buildings as opposed to just the 1 would be so advantageous for our students. And to me, that cost is worth it. So for me, I really believe option 3 is a good one. And I'm just gonna add this, I was out of Davis today. I had to drop off a donation of some paper for the reading incentives out there. And I overheard a conversation regarding the only kindergarten class that's gonna be out there this year that has 24 students in it, 3 of which require assistance, 2 of which have particular apparatus that they need to have. And there's just a question of whether or not that room can handle that many kids. And I guess my whole thing is I just feel like this option 3 really provides a balancing out of this classroom dilemma that we have. We constantly are back and forth on this classroom is low, this classroom is high, and option 3 addresses that issue because it disperses our children in buildings appropriately according to the number of students in that grade level. So for me, I think it's a good fit for our district, and I think the cost is worth it. I agree to some extent when you look at the comprehensive plan closely. There are positions housed in that comprehensive plan that will cost this district more money. So to sit there and say that this is the only thing that's going to cost us money, I don't believe, and I don't think that anybody can say that. So that's where I am. Thank you.
We'll start this end, Mrs. Stover.
Out of all the options, option 3 is the best. I kind of have to agree with Kelly in the way the structure is, but my biggest concern is there is no cost savings, and what is going to be the one-time cost of moving the administration building and all of the fiber optics and everything that we have to do. That's not on here, what that one-time cost is going to be for all that move, and that's going to be a significant amount of cost to the district. And that is my concern, because if that's $350,000 or more, we can't afford to do that as well. And out of the 3 options that we're talking about tonight, I think option 3 would be the best if there's anything that we want to pursue and still continue to look at.
Mr. Schweitzer.
I like option 3. I want to make sure we understand that option 3 includes the closing of this building and moving the central office into the E wing of the middle school. And we don't have a real firm number as far as what the cost would be to move out of here and move into that new building. But that option does include closure of this building, and there should be some savings, I would think, but I'm not sure. I don't know how much the building would sell for, and I don't have the feel for what the savings would actually be for closing this building and selling it. But what I'd like clarified though on all 3 of the options is the recurring costs and how you came up with these numbers. And I'd like to start with option 1, where you're showing a recurring cost of $285,000. How'd you come up with that number? While you're looking, I'm also would be asking the same question for option 2 and option 3.
So,
I think that's what he's looking for all of them now, Mr. Schweitzer.
Option 1, the net recurring cost was determined as we presented it on July 10th of two additional special ed learning support teachers, 2 additional special ed learning support aides, and 1 regular teacher, and then the annual savings of the admin building. The annual savings of this building would be approximately $30,000 as projected, and the recurring cost of those additional positions are just shy of $316,000. Option 2, which all buildings remain, there is an additional learning support special ed, no, 1 additional emotional support aide, 1 additional emotional support teacher, and 1 additional learning support aide. Those costs are what you see there, just shy of $165,000.
Go over those positions again, Mr. Andrews, please.
It is 1 emotional support teacher, 1 emotional support aide, and 1 learning support aide. 2 aides, 1 teacher.
Thank you.
And then option 3, that number presented there, is the same exact positions and netted of a $30,000 recurring savings in this building.
Thank you.
Mr. Brumberg?
I have to definitely agree with John. All 3 of them have costs associated with them. Number 3 has underlying costs with retrofitting the administration, and I, for one, would never want to see the administration moved into the student body population.
I agree with the consensus. It seems to be that option 3 of these 3 would be our best choice of those that are presented to us tonight. I am concerned that we have no cost savings in option 3. I do like the configuration of the students. My concern is that closing the admin building would be a very front-end loaded cost. And we would have to start determining getting an architect or some specialist in here to actually determine what those costs would be to move everything from here to the proposal in option 3 would be the middle school. And then again, how much of that are we going to recoup through the sale of this building? And that could also, while we're spending money on one end to move all of the functions of this building into the middle school, this building could sit for, any given number of years without finding another use or finding a purchaser. So, you look at the lot and say, boy, that would make a nice Sheets or a Unimart or, something of that nature. But we are technically, I think, and Mr. Francis, I think, was one of the first to point this out, we're probably about 5 inches from the floodplain, is that?
Correct.
So the value of this property, would we sell it, would not be as much as most people would think it would be. I know there were some numbers thrown around last year when we were discussing it up to the, over $2 million range. And I think that's pretty much a pipe dream that that's ever going to happen, given the problems with the property itself. So if I had to choose one of the 3, I would probably pick number 3. But the working through the process would be a nightmare, I think. And we still don't know what the expenses are to move the network services. anybody else want to take a second stab at adding pros and cons or about option 3 or the other plans that were presented?
What's the assessed value? Well, is the assessed value of this property?
There probably is one carried on the books, but it may be wildly unrealistic because there's no taxes that are paid by it, so nobody really pays that much attention to it.
And I think we actually had brought that up at a board meeting at one time to hire an organization to appraise the property. And it does cost us money, and the board at the time voted not to undergo that process. Any other questions or comments regarding any of these plans?
When we were looking at these options, and then we, after we discovered what they were, a real motivating factor was the idea of the K-3 kindergarten, first and second grade, the concept of learning to read. Where learning to read is so important in kindergarten, first and second grade. And then to follow on that after the children learn to read and they move into third, fourth, and fifth grade where they read to learn, that this structure that we're talking about here was conducive to, and in support of that concept. And of course, there's nothing more important than our children learning to read. If they graduate from Jersey Shore and all our children know how to read, that's going to be a tremendous gift to all our children. So I don't think, and I haven't thought about this learning to read thing too much, but it's certainly got my attention. And I know when it first came up, Dr. Winbush was very excited about the idea of K-1, 2, and 3 concentrating on learning to read, and then 3, 4, and 5 read to learn. So this option is conducive to that thought.
Amen.
Maybe I'm just an eternal optimist and delusional, but I really believe in my heart of hearts, because I've fought this fight for a really long time, that I want to see Jersey Shore move forward and be the district that's different. I do not want to see this district be status quo. I believe that some of the loss of the students that we saw and still continue to see is because we aren't really listening to what parents are saying they want. And what I heard during every single closure hearing that I've ever been to is that our parents want our children to start out small and work their way, to have a protective area and a smaller setting, and to move forward in that as they grow. And you know, what I heard from the feasibility study, which no one really quotes, is that Avis in particular is already laid out as a 21st century learning environment. It is also got a lot of exits to it, and I'll just stop there. And I guess my thing is, why are we looking at declining enrollment when I look over and the question was asked in a capital projects meeting years and years ago of only Amish are buying ground over in the valley, and I had to say, well, our lots are selling pretty well. When I look at the lots that we have sold just personally in that valley, they are filled with young children. They are filled with children that exceed 2, 3, 4 children in each of those properties. So to sit there and to say that we are banking everything on declining enrollment instead of looking at the positive possibility of being seriously on the cutting edge, and I go all the way to our CTE programs at the high school, is something that I feel is of value. And I get the financial piece. I probably pay a substantial amount of taxes. So I'm a taxpayer too. I spend a lot of money in our businesses paying taxes here in my residence. But this is important, back to what Mr. Schweitzer said. There are kids, and if we can be different, I think we are going to see an increase in people coming into this district. And that's what I heard from every person at that podium that was not discussing the tax side, which is absolutely a legitimate issue. So I guess I just wanted to add that you know, these options are positive, even though we have costs attached to them. Not saying that they're the ones that have to happen. I'm just saying that I really want us to think positively about moving this district in a direction that maybe no one ever thought of, because that's where we are. We have to market ourselves anymore. It's a business, unfortunately. Education's become a business. We're competing against different entities for the students in our districts. And yeah, it's painful at the front end, but boy, what a possibility at the back end. Thank you.
Kelly, I agree with about half of what you said.
I know you do, John. We don't have to debate it here.
No. I agree we want to move forward and we want to be the stellar district. My opinion, the way to do that is save resources where we can and invest them into the programs and improve the programming in the district and expand that programming so we can improve the CT and have nursing, so we can have agriculture, so we can improve the engineering and the science programs we have that we cannot do without additional resources.
But the part that's being hit here, though, the part that's being hit in every single one of these options has nothing to do with our middle school and high school. It has everything to do with our elementary schools.
By cutting the expenses there, we're still going to offer a primary education to these students.
Right.
It's excellent.
If they
And then
get to
those
that point,
resources-
if they get to that point, they don't move out of the district.
Mr. Lawson, one at a time.
I agree.
And if we save the resources externally in buildings where we don't need a brick and mortar, we can invest it into the programs for the students. And the numbers don't lie, Kelly. You may see what you see in the schools, in the houses, in the public, and I live in the valley as well, but the numbers are what they are. We have the data to show the enrollment's doing. We have the projections that it's continuing to decline. Until the data shows something different, we can all speculate any way we want to, but the data currently shows numbers going down.
And I'd just like to comment on the philosophy of learn to read and read to learn. My grandchildren have all gone to Jersey Shore Elementary. And frankly, the read to learn and the learn to read is directly related to the teacher in the classroom, not so much the building that they're in or, you know, whether they have, you know, wooded ground outside or, you know, furniture or anything else. It's really all about the teacher paying attention to that function. So, and, you know, from my personal experience, by the time I was in 6th grade, I had already been to 5 different schools in 3 different states. And I survived. You know, so we're all worried about, you know, a student moving from one building to another building, and as if that's the be-all, end-all. And it's really not. I agree with John. We need to concentrate on the programs, whether those programs be at the elementary level or at the high school level. Let's face it, at the high school level, that's the level where our students are going to get accepted into colleges and get scholarships. Nobody ever asked me how I did in 3rd grade. You know, and that's just being honest. So it's really all about, you know, the teachers that are in the classroom in front of the students. And right now we've got a huge inequity. I know somebody brought up earlier that we have one classroom, kindergarten students that has 24 kids in that classroom. We have also classrooms at other grade levels that have 13 and 14. So to be fair to all the students and all of the teachers for that matter, we need to do what we can to balance those out. I think of these 3 options we're discussing tonight, option 3 does the best job of that. But it also costs us $136,000 more, which given the 3 options is also probably the better choice. What we don't know is what our capital costs are gonna be to make that happen, because these are essentially just operating costs. These are salaries, HVAC, you know, all those everyday items that happen every year. It's not the borrowing of bonds. They're issuing bonds to rebuild Jersey Shore Elementary, as we did. We also have to consider that when we did Jersey Shore Elementary, and I don't know exactly what the number is, but we also got reimbursement back from the state under PlanCon for that project. So the state was helping us fund our investment in our students. Unfortunately, right now, the state has discontinued that program or put it in moratorium, depending on who you talk to, they'll describe it in different means. And speaking with one of our legislatures, the reason that they put that into mothballs was because we had too many of the affluent school districts that were building Taj Mahal schools and leaving school districts like Jersey Shore and small districts in our area behind. And because it was just, hey, you spend this much, we'll give you this percentage of it back, based on your pay ratio primarily. And that doesn't exist anymore. So issuing bonds is not as much a solution as it used to be. So if we do the closure of the school and moving everything into the middle school, how are we gonna, pay for those bonds?
Very well put, Mr. Allen.
Anybody else on options 1, 2, or 3?
Well, I just want to clarify something. I've heard us through this discussion, especially, I think in July we had a teacher come to the podium and mention it, and I think some administrators had, that they don't want to have any program loss. And I just want us to consider, I consider increasing our class sizes at the elementary level, the way this plan is going to go, a program loss. When kids have less interaction with their teacher because the numbers are swelling, and I didn't take the guy from Crabtree seriously when he responded to Merle by saying 49 kids in a classroom, but the potential's there. We've had people at the podium cite when they were in school, they had 38 kids in the classroom. And that's what I'm afraid of, and that's a program loss because kids need that interaction with the teacher. As Mr. Allen said, that's the key. But when our plan is to have a setting where we can start to increase class sizes to balance them, then I have a problem with it because there's a program loss there, whether you want to admit it or not. There's a loss to our kids. So I just didn't want that to go unsaid.
Okay. That pretty much ends our 30 minutes unless somebody wants to make a motion we go beyond that.
I have a question. What's next?
At the next meeting, we'll be discussing the 2 closure options as well as a modified option 3 that was proposed by one of the respondents to the special meeting. And we're going to ask the administration to cost that option out and see where it comes in as compared to the options we already have. So the next meeting will be primarily benefits, pros and cons of closure of one or both of the outlying elementary schools.
Thank you.
Okay, and so we'll close old business A. I have a question, and I guess we'll go to Mr. Enders regarding the scoreboard at the soccer field. If you just kind of give us an off-the-cuff of where we are on replacing that or fixing it, because soccer season's going to start here in a couple weeks, and we need to be able to know what the score is.
The bids were received. We did not receive any bids. They were open on July 2nd. I met with, once we did not receive any bids, I went and met with our current depository
that the district uses, Muncie Bank and Trust. Started conversations with them at the beginning of July. I recently got verbal approval of their willingness to sponsor the scoreboard. And right now we're working on logistics of the actual agreement, and the plans are to present that agreement for approval at the next board meeting, along with probably after it, the approval to purchase the new scoreboard. Once we can get that done, when we get on the schedule to do that, I don't know for sure. I haven't reached out to the company yet. But as of right now, we are in conversations with Muncie Bank and Trust and having a little commitment from them to sponsor that scoreboard.
Is your gut feeling that we will or will not be able to install that before the season starts? I'm not holding you to it.
I would say probably not before the season starts, because I don't think it would start. It would be in before September 1st.
And,
I'm hopeful it'll be in by October 1st.
Okay. So we'll need to probably work with our new athletic director.
Bring you to work already.
Because if that's the case, you may be looking at it a couple weeks without use of that field, maybe we can jockey some schedules around to.
I believe the current scoreboard operates as far as keeping score and keeping time. My understanding is more of a sound issue than anything else.
No, there were games that went completely blank last year.
So if we get the new scoreboard, and then we get the new press box, we should be in pretty good shape there.
We're waiting for that.
We're waiting for that donation, Merle.
Endowment, Mr. Schweitzer. We'll let you be the announcer.
Thank you, Mr. Enders. I didn't want to put you on the spot on that one, but
Not a problem.
just have to keep that on the front edge if we can. At this point, we'll open up to the second session of courtesy of the floor. Anybody wishing to address the board on whatever's on your mind? Mr. Francis?
Bert Francis, and I haven't had to move since the last time I was up there at 1425 Locust Street. I know some of you like to see me leave town a long time ago, maybe, I don't know, but we get along. Last board meeting, I raised a question which I didn't receive an answer for. Subsequently to that, I submitted a right-to-know request, and I received a 5-day response on my right-to-know request, which the information officer requested a 30-day extension on that request. And we've encountered this on more than one occasions with people and so on. I don't think this is quite fair for a yes or no answer to take 35 days. And the Office of Open Records says, can the public ask questions during the comment period? And the answer is that yes. Although members of the agency are not required to provide an answer, it is a good practice to do so whenever possible. Answering questions can demonstrate a commitment to helping constituents, and in many cases, answering questions informally at a public meeting can reduce future requests under the right-to-know law, which saves time and money in both for the agency and the commenter. So I would hope that in the future that a simple yes or no question, that how can we address this so we don't upset you folks? We ask the question and we get a straight yes or no answer for a serious question. And I'd like to hear from you folks. Why don't we get a yes or no answer or immediate?
That issue I referred to our solicitor. I passed him all the documents that you had provided that evening, and I think he's prepared to address those now if you have the time.
Right now? Yeah, that'd be great if you allow the time, yeah.
Well, the right-to-know law, as you know, Mr. Francis, does allow for a 30-day extension.
Oh, sure, I'm familiar with all that, yeah.
And the routine response of the municipalities that our firm represents, and my experience with those that others in the area represent, are in order to conduct the business of the district, it's often necessary to use the 30-day extension in order to compile information.
I can understand that.
I think the issue of the seriousness or non-seriousness of the question isn't addressed by the statute. The question is really what time is needed to attend to the answer and get an appropriate response. And very often, the people responding, and I believe the right to know law officer for the district is Mr. Enders, has a lot of things on his plate that require being addressed at that time. So I appreciate your concern, but we're in compliance with the law, as you know.
Yeah, I do understand all that, you know that, and I agree with you, Mr. Enders, that he has a great deal on his plate. As a matter of fact, I don't think he should be burdened with this additional on top of what he has to do as far as balancing the books. That's my own opinion on that. I think we should have a separate individual for that. But getting back to my main concern as to, I raised a serious question, which in my opinion just required a yes or no answer. And my question was, as I asked, did the board approve for our president of the board to serve as the chief negotiating officer in our contract negotiations? Did the board approve that? And I talked to several members, and I called members and talked to members, and they don't remember discussing this or talking about this or whatever. I think is that complicated for a yes or no answer? I don't know.
Good.
As far as I'm aware, there wasn't a public vote on that issue. That said, because it's a non-voting committee of the board.
That's correct. Yes.
It was a consensus approval of the committee members of who the chairman would be, and the president, as the holder of the gavel, by custom and practice here, has the ability to create his own committees and to appoint himself.
I understand all that. Yeah.
So there wasn't a public vote. Our opinion is that no public vote was required.
It doesn't require a public vote that I know of, no.
Yes.
Yeah, no. The key to this is, this puts us, I think, in a serious negotiating position with the association, based on the fact that we know that the president and superintendent are automatically ex officio members of all committees, and they are not considered part of the quorum of that committee. So with my understanding, the president, he appoints the committee, and I think he should take the responsibility, and the first person he appoints to that committee normally is the leader of that committee. And if not, then he allows the committee to choose who they want to represent them. This is a standard policy to follow and proceed, so on and so forth. So I think that my concern in this matter is, if we have the president of the board as the chief negotiator in our contract negotiations, and so on and so forth, at some point in time, this could backfire on us, because it's going to come back to the board, and this committee is going to bring serious matters back to the board, and the main priority for the president of any board or whatever to be unbiased and not opinionated on decisions. So if he's the leader of this, and so on and so forth, beyond my comprehension, you're not going to be biased to come back. So then it all boils down to the fact that we're going to take a vote, and there's only two ways that he can vote. Number one, he can vote by private ballot, and he can also vote in an event that determines the outcome of that vote. So that means that he could end up being the deciding factor on that vote. So I don't think this is appropriate, and I don't think it's ethically or morally correct for him to serve in that position, and could be in this position that he's the deciding factor of which way we go. So I think we need to read all the committee responsibilities of the president and appointing committees and how they determine and how they do business. So I think that we need this matter to be settled. And I've talked to everybody involved with this, and I know how he became in this position. I don't want to talk about that in public. If you want to go behind closed doors, I'll be happy to talk about that, how he became the chief negotiator. So I still think the board should say, yeah, we want to talk about this. Thank you.
There's a lot to unpack there. Do you want me to address any of it?
I can address it. One thing anyway, the board president in a board, a small board in particular, never has to exclude himself from voting on any issue. And that's according to the Pennsylvania School Board Association.
Yeah, I
So
understand that. I understand.
regardless, I don't have to withhold my vote to only those times when I break a tie.
I understand that.
I can vote in for or against at any time.
I understand
which
all
is-
that.
Which has
I
been a
understand-
past practice.
I understand board policy 900, very first paragraph states that this board will conduct all their business according to Robert's Rules of Order. That's what states in the board policy. And I also know that this board can have any rules you want to have. You can make your own rules, you can come up with your own plans, and so on and so forth, as long as you don't demean or diminish any of the rules above you. So what you said, it doesn't hold water for me, because you can't demean or diminish any rules that are above you. Thank you.
Thank you. You have anything you'd like to add?
Mr.
Sorry,
Francis,
Mr. Shaw.
Mr. Francis, as you know, you and I have had conversations in the past about ex officio appointments.
Yeah.
Ex officio, in my opinion, and I've given you my written conclusion, is a method of being on a committee. It does not diminish one's role on the committee. They have the same role that they would if they were appointed by the chair to a committee. So I disagree with you respectfully on that. I also disagree respectfully on the issue that a committee chairman, or the board president for that matter, has to present something neutrally. That individual has the opportunity and is allowed to present things in a fact-based way and persuasively discuss why his or her position on a particular issue might be where it is. I think the important thing is, whatever happens at the committee level, there will be a public vote at some point in time on a contract. Every member of this board will be able to vote. Every member of this board will be able to ask questions in executive session sometimes, because as you know, executive sessions are allowed for bargaining, but also in the public, and they can state their reason why they are taking a particular position. So whatever happens will happen with a public vote, and what leads up to that is fact-based, but the chairman of the committee has the ability to have a position. That individual does not have to be neutral.
My only concern is that they come back.
Mr. Francis, it's Mr. Sharman's turn here at the podium.
He's addressing me.
He was answering your question.
No, but it's still in the rules that the vote has to approve him to serve in that position.
Mr. Sharman, thank you.
John Sharman, 221 Pleasant Avenue. I've seen in the past with negotiations going, this kind of attacks on the president of the school board in the past, so it's nothing new. Of the three options that were presented, I have seen no concern about what it is for the extra tax, what it would be, extra costs of the taxpayers who are already getting pretty well taxed out. We have another situation here that it's going to really impact the Jersey Shore community itself, and Jersey Shore here coming through 2020, and that is an increase in flood insurance in town with it. As far as closing this building here, I can't for the life of me why a plan has been presented. Any of the options that has no cost as to what it would be to relocate, remodel the wing of the middle school, as Mr. Allen has pointed out, the different costs is what it's going to be. I don't know whether you recall, Mr. Allen, Tom, we had a conversation when we were discussing about the with the elementary school, and I made a comment to you, maybe we ought to move the administration building up there. And I believe that cost that you told would come to would cost $1 million at that time.
I think just the network services was going to be something in the neighborhood of $350,000 to $400,000.
And I believe if you told me at that time what it was going to cost $1 million, what was my response? Not a good idea. And what is being, these people, some of these people on the board here do not realize that
where are you going to have the warehousing that you have here? This building serves its purpose with it. For keeping a lot of delivery trucks down at this end of town, and keeps them off the busy streets of Locust, Allegheny, and Thompson. What it amounts to is for some members have no courage to go forward and no regard for the taxpayers, as far as I'm concerned. And if you want to talk about firms paying taxes, I noted in the paper within about 2 blocks here, there's one establishment that owes about $22,000 in back taxes. Thank you.
Carol Homler, Porter Township. It's been said that education is like a business. Okay, that's fine. When a business is going under, if they don't increase their spending, they, as you see, these retailers and your restaurants and things, they've had to cut back in order to keep their bottom line where they want it to be. They don't go out and spend more because they're having financial problems. Numbers don't lie. We have decreasing enrollment. I mean, you can't just keep burying your head in the sand. Why not have reoccurring savings instead of reoccurring expenses? I don't understand. The district's going broke. I don't understand how you can justify spending more money. I understand, you know, it might be better for the students. A lot of things would be better. I'd like it better if I had a brand new car. We mix up needs and wants. We can't have everything. We can't afford it. You just can't keep spending and then tax people to meet your expenses. There's got to be some better ideas out here besides increasing everything. Tax increases should not be your automatic response. It should be the last thing. I understand it's necessary. I anticipate my taxes are going to go up every year, which isn't a problem if I see financial decisions being made that makes some sense, just like I have to in my own home. Put all students first, not just the students in the outlying areas. You know you're going to have to cut programs and things if you keep these buildings open. It's going to hurt all of the students. I just don't understand. And when we remodeled the elementary school, it was always in anticipation of closing all 3 of the schools. Not to go again and remodel some sections so you can close this building down. It just doesn't make any sense. And what was brought up was the school was designed for the younger students. And to think that they can't learn at Jersey Shore is a terrible thought. It's just terrible. And all I can say is if you continue on this path, maybe the state will come in. I don't want to see that. I don't think anybody in this room wants to see that. But if we keep spending and spending and spending without any recourse, what else are the people supposed to do? I feel trapped. I feel trapped.
Thank you, Mrs. Palmer.
My name's Alicia Dobie. I live in Pike Township. And I do appreciate the board members trying to have a long-range plan that it may cost a little money up front. And businesses actually, if they're failing, do have to sometimes spend money. Get a new chef, get a new manager, hire someone to do advertising, maybe do remodeling. Sometimes you do have to spend money up front for a good long-range plan, and I appreciate you trying to get more students into the district. It is the worst possible time to vote on a closure. You cannot furlough for savings. You aren't furloughing for years. If you wanted to cut a position, shouldn't that have happened this year since you had 4 fourth grade classrooms in Jersey Shore Elementary, and now those students are moving into 5 fifth grade classrooms. All your projections include an assumption of teacher contracts. I thought you are currently in negotiations. It seems that this would give teachers the green light to negotiate for the savings you will have only yet projected on paper. According to the superintendent's own FAQ, 26 students left after Nipno's closure, including elementary students and their siblings. You had an increase in cost of $350,000 for the 2013-2014 school year due to the students leaving for cyber charter schools. And now you want to close 2 schools, and you still have never projected any costs related to students you'll lose due to charter and cyber schools. And also, on an unrelated note to the closures, since it hasn't really been brought up much, how embarrassing it was for this district to lose that furlough lawsuit. I observed that article shared all through social media, Facebook, people saying, now I know where I'm not moving to Jersey Shore, they don't know what they're doing. You lose people wanting to move here over a tragic misstep like that. That is why a solicitor is paid to ensure that these mistakes do not happen. And what did board members do? Give this solicitor another contract. That is an insult to our whole community.
May I add something to what Mrs. Bilby stated? Alicia, I just would like to finish what the FAQ states that you stated this evening. The question was there an increase in cyber charter school use after the Nipno's elementary closing? Do you think that that same thing will happen? My answer was 26, which you said, of 155 elementary students withdrew after the closing of the school. 7 of those students were typical changes. They moved residence or a placement. Of the 26 who left the district, 14 returned to the district after the 13-14 school year. And we would anticipate that some would choose to leave the district regardless. Just wanted to give that.
Thank you for clarifying that.
I didn't have 2 schools.
Michelle Hensler, Hensler Road, Jersey Shore, Richmond Township. You had said earlier that if this building went up for sale, you don't know how long it would sit on the market. So what's the difference between this building and 2 other buildings? Have you guys looked for potential buyers for Sal and Avis, or are you just assuming that they'll sell quicker than this building?
The difference in this building is when we close Sal and Avis, it would be a relatively simple closure of a building. If we sell this building, it's going to take a lot more capital investment to move the resources of this building to another location. It's not as difficult to move, I hate to sound kind of simplistic about it, but students and desks and chairs and those types of things from one building to another than it is to rewire our network services.
So,
and as I said, that alone could be $350,000 to $400,000.
but it's 5 inches from the floodplain, and you feel like that's okay? I'm just asking,
I don't feel like it's okay, but it's what we have, and those would be the costs. It doesn't matter whether it's okay or not. Those would be the costs to move this building or to sell this building. And we can, get the servers up above that 5 inches. I think they're above that themselves right now. So, the floodplain may be 5 inches to get to the ground floor of the building, but it's not like it's going to be up to the ceiling most likely.
And one more question. When parents are registering their kids, do you guys encourage them to go to JSE? Or do you let them go to whatever school they want to go to?
When parents register their students, wherever the building of residence is that student is supposed to attend, that's where they're registered at. Sometimes we do receive letters from parents requesting that their child not go to a specific building because of various reasons. And as stated at a previous meeting, that particular option was given prior to me coming, and I've just continued that option. But the board is appraised of whoever requests and what building they go to.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Jana Sharman, 220 Mount Pleasant Avenue. I'd like to ask a question about something that was brought up at the last meeting, the swimming pool. I see you approved $27,000 for an evaluation. and preparation, and talked about $150,000 to $200,000 for replacing the main drain for the swimming pool. How do you anticipate financing that? What is the balance in the capital projects account?
I don't think we've gotten along far enough to say how we're gonna do finance it at this point. They're just now getting into the high school to evaluate what needs to be done. It might be, a $25,000 repair, it might be a $200,000 repair, as you said, but we really don't know until we get there.
What is the balance in the capital project account?
Give Mr. Andrews his own mic.
Mr. Shireman, I can give you the June 30th balance, which I believe there hasn't been a whole lot of action in it in the month of July, and I'm looking at the board agenda from last meeting. The capital reserve at Monthly Bank had $654,000 in it.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Prior Mifflin Township. Having been on the board and seeing how political things got when we were closing the Nipponos Elementary School, I know a lot of things happen behind the scenes. But I just want to make it sure that everybody know that all these proposals on these optional plans, the way I look at it, is just a stall tactic. There are people that get together and they make a plan and they're following it. Because there are new people coming on the board in December. And guess what? A lot of those people, they don't want to close the school for any reason. They don't care how much it's going to cost the taxpayers. They don't care about security.
This isn't a political campaign here, so.
Well, it is behind closed doors.
Well,
But in the end, any one of these options is not going to be that figure quoted. It's going to be a lot more than that, believe me. That's from my experience where I used to work, seeing what happened. Maintenance costs will continue to increase at those outlying elementary schools while the population continues to decrease. Avis and Sal will become white elephants. That's what they're going to be. If you don't do something about the millage, you're not going to have people moving back in this district having kids and going to those schools. If we close this administration building and move everything to the middle school, any future plan to change the grade structure and close any outlying elementary schools will be eliminated as a future option. That's what certain people want. There's a report in 2018 by the professional education architect. Let me give you some figures in that report. Right now, the Jersey Shore High School, it was designed for a capacity to hold 1,466 kids. The population last school year was 736. Now, where do you think those students are coming from, folks? They're coming up from the elementary through the middle school to the high school. You're looking at 50%. Jersey Shore Middle School, design capacity 1,026, had a population of 584. Avis, design capacity 340, current enrollment last year 214. Saladaysburg Elementary 290, design capacity 217. Actually, that has a fairly high utilization, 75%. But the population really dropped last year from a normal of between 40 and 50 kids a year. We lost 129 kids. You can't ignore those figures. And are we going to end up with elementary schools we got to put a $500,000 plus roof on to house, what, half the capacity? If you were in a business,
Thank you, Mr. Pryor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pryor.
You're most welcome.
So I just want to, Caitlin Calhoun, Avisboro. I just kinda wanna throw this out there, we could pay upwards to $250,000 to fix a swimming pool, but we can't afford to move servers. It's kind of a double-edged sword there. Mr. Brungard asked to see the numbers presented tonight for cost savings in regards to closing Nipinos. Obviously, looking at these numbers, there is no savings because these numbers don't show the whole picture. It shows eliminated teachers' positions, but not the expansion of Jersey Shore Elementary. What is really going on here? You are scheduled to talk about all these options of savings and doing so with many options, but none of them include how to increase revenue. These discussions are obviously in preparation for a vote. I'm honestly very upset. Your presentation last month was shoddy, to say the least. You didn't allow time to do your homework. You presented on the increase in cost, which is apparent, but not the actual benefit of keeping our schools open. Is this a planned ploy? We have 25 plus kids in classes, but can't afford more teachers. So if there's 480 minutes in their 8-hour class school day, and there are 30 kids in a room, that is less than 16 minutes of passing time with a teacher. Because they have all those other kids to worry about, right? We can't furlough more teachers incorrectly to save or cost us money. But we also can't spend money on appraisals of the actual administration building, just a fancy feasibility study. Here's a savings suggestion: eliminate an administrative position. With declining enrollment and students learning from devices, what's the need for 2? Move the 6th grade back to the elementary schools. Allow our kids to be just that, and our teachers to do what they are paid to do. Look at ways to increase enrollment. I also want to speak about the iPads that were in last meeting agenda. We spent all this money on these iPads, but to you that is just equal cost of a teacher's salary. So that's the savings, right? Let's eliminate another teacher. Has the board done their homework? Why an iPad versus a Chromebook? What studies actually show about screen time in regards to our children's learning abilities? You want to focus on learning to read in grades K through 2. What happened to picking up a book? Has anyone done a recent cost evaluation on actual savings of an iPad versus textbooks? Just out of curiosity, that would be something to look into also. Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for one more.
Okay. Nancy Jashaski, Boston Township. Do we pay, how much is the flood insurance for this building now?
District limited? The district never had flood insurance since I've been here, so that
Oh, we
was
don't have it?
eliminated, must have been a while ago, so I don't know exactly when.
So is it actually in the flood zone here? Yeah.
We've looked into it, I don't know if it ever was, had a certification of height to determine whether or not it's actually in the floodplain. I do not know.
Okay.
I've heard the 5-inch rule, I've heard that the front stoop is not, I've heard 3 different versions of whether or not this building's in the floodplain.
Okay. We're going to go ahead and close courtesy of the floor. The board will be going into executive for personnel and legal, and we'll return to conduct no additional business.